Welcome to That 30 Show, a podcast where we talk about the good, the bad, and the surprising parts of our 30s. I'm G, and I'm finally 30. I'm excited to find out if 30 really is the new 20, because if it is, then the best years are yet to come.
And I'm David. I'm entering my mid-30s. I used to have no back pain or trouble sleeping, but now I live off a healthy diet of self-help books and dream of being in bed by 10 p.m. every night. Join us each week as we try to figure out together what life in your 30s is all about.
Welcome back to That 30 Show. Hey G, how's it going?
Welcome back. It's a wild Saturday night over at the That 30 Show pod.
I know that you had conflicting plans and that you chose the pod. Thank you. And this is not as wild of a Saturday night as you usually would. But for our guest today, Henry, I think this is probably a pretty regular Saturday night for you, Henry, would you say? As in like being a...
not regular, because today was an extra busy day. My wife said had to do a full shift today, so I had to take care of Lucas for an entire day on a weekend. That's usually not the case.
So Lucas, you mentioned Lucas. Yes. That's what we want to talk to you about today. Henry's one of my best friends. I know him since university, and he's one of the first friends that I'm really close with that has a kid. And so 30s, as we've talked about many times, is a huge decade for people who choose to have kids, because that's usually when they have that. And I'm so excited and interested to learn more about your experience, Henry. You know, we're good friends and stuff, but I don't think we really dive too deeply into any of the questions about what it's really like being a dad. I don't think you and I really talk about this.
No, actually, it's going to be my first time talking about this with anyone besides Sid, and maybe like first time I've actually thought about these questions. When you primed me with this topic and asked me to come, I was like, oh shit, like, what did I say? So it took me a while to form all these thoughts in my head, and I've only been a dad for like less than 2 years, so I'll try my best.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer, right? Like, we're not asking you to be the spokesperson for all dads in the world. I want
to be, but anyway.
Yeah, we want to know your unique experience as a dad and get a bit of insight into that. I don't know if there's too much I should elaborate on about you, Henry. I don't know how you would introduce yourself. When I think of Henry, I think of, badminton, sort of nerd. We always joke about that there's not many things in life that Henry likes more than badminton, except Sydney, of course.
Sydney, yeah.
You're big on, I think, craft beer. You grew up playing a lot of piano. You're a software programmer. But I think the role of father, would you say the role of being a father is what you identify as the biggest role that you inhabit now? Before you would say, oh yeah, I'm a badminton player. Or you might say that, oh, I'm a teacher. You used to be a teacher. Would you say father is the most prominent identity for you now?
It's a good question. I don't know. It's interesting how, like, when you describe me as like badminton and stuff like that, I think up to my 20s, I was kind of forming this identity. I'm a badminton player, I'm a teacher. I'm a student. Once you become a father, all your previous identity of what made you, it's kind of gone. So then at this stage where you're reforming your identity as a father, and you're learning everything about being your father, you're learning how to take care of a child, you're learning how to take care of your spouse. All of it is very new. So yes, it's been very different to see myself as someone with a kid now. I probably wouldn't recognize myself when I was 25 or even 29 if I were to look at myself now. Yeah.
It's interesting you say that, because I think for all of us who know Henry, at least for me, even before you became a dad, it was always so easy for me to see you as a father. And hopefully you take that as a compliment, because it is. I always saw you as, oh, Henry would be such a good dad. Like he's got dad vibes. I feel you would fit. Like I was like, I always look at Henry and like, oh, he's gonna slide into the shoes of being a dad seamlessly and effortlessly, because that's just the kind of person you are in terms of just having a good head on your shoulders. So,
Henry, I'm interested what David just said. Is that true? Like, did you always want to be a father? Did you always see yourself having kids and being kind of that father figure?
Yeah, that's so interesting because, like, David, you're not the first one to tell me that. Another friend I just met up with had told me something similar. I never understood that. So I'm still trying to grasp what people mean by that. I never saw myself as like a father. I always knew I wanted kids. I always knew, like, when I see like myself in my 60s, what I envision is like me looking to the sunset and my son by my side or daughter by my side and just like staring off in the sunset together. Kind of like, in Lion King where, Mufasa and Simba are looking distance. You must never go there, Yeah, I take it as a compliment when people say like they see me as a father. I was like, cool. I don't know what that means, but yeah, thank you.
So, David, what do you mean by that? Because I feel like a lot of people say, okay, like for women, I could totally see you as a mother because like they're maybe nurturing or they're like,
have people said that about you, G?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
Well, I haven't heard it lots about people saying that about male and like, I could totally see you being as a father, that kind of thing. So how did you see like Henry as a father?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it's entirely subjective, my answer, in terms of what I interpret it as good father qualities. It's just my opinion. But I think the reason why it's said a lot less than compared to females is because men don't often come across as very, well, I don't know if this is true. This is just my experience, but men don't often come across as the most naturally responsible sex. You see these clips of like these young boys and how young boys have fun compared to how young girls have fun. Mm-hmm. I'm generalizing here, but the boys, they're going to have fun by trying to see how hard they can crack their head against the wall. And they're going to take turns doing that. And then they're going to laugh about it. The joke on TikTok or the video showing this is like, I can't remember what, but like, this is very typical of guys, they do stupid shit. But for Henry, he's always, to me as a friend, been very level-headed, very responsible, very thoughtful. I think responsible is the main word that comes to mind. And he's sensitive too. And so I think if I see a man who exudes, sensitivity and responsibility, then that's fatherhood qualities. But I don't think I see that mixture of responsibility and sensitivity in a lot of men. It's quite easy for a lot of men to take time to grow into responsible selves. Responsible, well, I mean, what does that mean, right? It means making decisions that are thought out in a way that it will have long-lasting positive impacts, or at the very least won't have long-term negative impacts.
Do you find that as you get older, more friends who are more sensitive? Was it only like in your early 20s you didn't see a lot of people or men ever have those, I guess, qualities?
Yeah, I think, as I said, I think it takes time to grow into that. A lot of people joke about how men take longer to mature than women, right? For example, a lot of people like the idea of having an older sister who can guide the younger brother to be a bit more mature. And so I think it comes with age. So certainly as I've gotten older, and especially into my 30s, I think a lot of guys around me I've noticed have taken life a little bit more seriously, I think.
David, you mentioned Henry, like one of the traits was that Henry is very level-headed, which I think is probably a very important trait, especially if you are around a pregnant wife for 9 months. You probably need to be a little bit level-headed, right? But I'm curious, if you take us back when you found out you were going to be a father, or those like 9 months before you were about to be a father, like how are you feeling?
Yeah, great question. Like, I honestly don't remember how I felt. It's just been like a whirlwind. But I do remember thinking, I guess things are going to change, eh? I don't know. Everyone approaches fatherhood differently, and I'm definitely the type of person that just takes swings. It's like, okay, well, this is going to change, so gotta get my shit ready, gotta get myself ready. Whether it be like finances or like learning more about fatherhood, like how to raise a child. And in hindsight, I should have done more. I think what I recognized during the whole fatherhood, what really revealed to me wasn't really so much myself, but how much my partner had to do, like how much women have to take on during the whole pregnancy. That shifted my whole worldview. Not my worldview, but like my appreciation for all the different small things that women do in a relationship. For example, like in the past when we plan for trips, I could be happily, okay, well, you planned this, you got it. I'll just pack my things and hop on a flight and just enjoy the trip, right? And then now I'm starting to realize, oh shit, like they actually do a lot of planning for this, like she has to go through all these cheap deals, all these cheap flights and all these things. It's those things that I can't take for granted that I started to pay attention more surprisingly during her pregnancy, because then I'm actively trying to support her in any way. So whether it's offloading, like maybe cleaning something for a while that I don't usually clean, or like recently we had a trip. I don't know why, but I just started becoming more involved in a trip planning. I'm just patting myself on the back, but she's probably like, what the hell do you mean,
More involved? What
yeah.
What do you mean you're more involved? You haven't been involved in anything.
No. What do you mean? Like, you just searched up 2 restaurants. What are you talking about? So, yeah, no, but definitely there's appreciation for all the little things that they do. And I was just so fascinated by this shift and change. And I was just reading a book that's actually a thing. There's a term for it, like some kind of labor that women take on that's kind of unnoticed by men.
You know how you said that you don't actually remember too much, partly because it was all of a bit of a whirlwind before Lucas was born. I have another friend that is going to be a dad in about a month or 2. He's told me how he doesn't actually feel that differently. And he's just going about life. He knows that his baby is about to arrive, but he doesn't really feel too strongly one way or another about the situation. And he thinks that he's going to really feel it on the day that he's born. And I think part of that reason that he thinks, and I certainly agree why that's the case, is because a man experiences that time of life very differently, because you don't have a human being literally growing inside you. There's really not that much changing for you as a dad. So as a soon-to-be father. So maybe that's partly why. Would you agree with that? Do you think that's part of it?
100%.
Transport us back to when he was born. Was there this instant shift and like, holy shit, yesterday was yesterday and today is completely different?
Yes, there was. It comes back to the labor, because Sid had a fairly, not difficult, but like it wasn't smooth at all. So when we first tried to do it, we tried to do natural birth. And you know how the movies portray natural birth? It's like, oh, push, push, push. In like 2 minutes, the baby comes out and everyone's happy. The mom's like looking like Gal Gadot in like 2 days, That was not the case, obviously.
It's not like that? Oh my gosh.
We had to do emergency C-section at one point, and then she was transported to this surgery room. During the whole transport, they asked me to change my clothes. So I was in the washroom the whole time, and when I stepped out of the room, they were gone. And then all I know is that she was in the surgery room. Yeah, that was probably a life-changing moment for me, because I just remember thinking, like, if she's gone and my baby is gone at this moment, like, my world would change. Yeah, that was a bit emotional for me there.
Holy. Yeah, I would think that's a bit emotional. That's pretty intense. Yeah, I guess you don't really know what's going on, hey? Because they don't really tell you much, I would assume, because they have to do emergency things. So they're not really trying to, like, their priority is not to try to keep you in the loop, really. But
no, they're just trying to like get her out of the room, go to the surgery room, all that stuff. Yeah, so the whole shift where like, holy shit, like if I have to carry the child myself, I don't think I'd do it myself. Seeing what she went through, going under a knife, and then not only did she go under a knife, there was like a whole 2-week recovery point. You have to hold her up, or every single time she goes down the stairs, you have to make sure like, she's not exerting herself too hard. And it kind of made me think, as a guy, I have it really, really easy. All I have to do is just make sure I'm fed, she's fed, and baby's fed, and just go to sleep, So, yeah, and then that's kind of where my fatherhood journey probably began, just more of a support role. Because at that point, the baby is just a meat potato. They don't really do much, right? So it's more about me and my wife at that point.
I mean, I guess you learned through experience, because you didn't really know that was going to happen. And there was a lot of unexpected things kind of, that sounds like, that happened during pregnancy and the delivery and everything. So, if you could go back and tell yourself, your younger version of Henry, about, fatherhood, about even, finding out that you're going to be a dad, transitioning to being a dad, what would you say? Or a piece of advice, I guess, that you would give to the younger Henry about fatherhood?
one thing definitely is surround myself with caring people. The reason I say that is, as a guy, I think in your previous 2 episodes ago, you talked with Uday and then kind of talking about friends. And I was like, Uday does not have a kid, does he?
Why would you coming to that conclusion?
I think there's one description about his friends, like how he just likes to chill, which is the same thing I did before I had a kid. I just want friends to chill and, just play video games. And I'm just happily playing board games or whatever. But now as a father, so much of my time has been consumed by childcare, supporting my partner. So like in the beginning, my whole focus was like me time. I was playing badminton. I was training for badminton. I was working out. I was like working my job. I was cooking meals for myself and my partner. And so much of it was me. And now all that me time is kind of reduced to maybe only like 1 hour a day, for example. So then I really have to choose, like, what do I want to do in that 1 hour? And there was a lot of reflection into myself, like, what is really actually important for me? Badminton's important, obviously. Working out is important. But what else? I had to cut off video games. Video games are not important for me. Board games are not important for me. Some things are not important for me anymore. So then the friends I made, those things were important for them, like hiking, for example, board games, video games. So then I got to a point, well, if I don't have anything common with my friends anymore, like, what do I do with my friends? Like, which other friends could I hang out with where things are important? For example, like having caring conversations, having space to like be vulnerable. And I didn't have friends that would happily open up that space or be like, this is cool. Let's just go to a Saturday night, just go to a cafe and just talk about our feelings. Typically guys aren't quite down for that, or if they are, it's over beers, and my friends don't drink, so I can't ask them for that. So probably what I'd say to my younger self is find friends who care and would be willing and very happily say, hey, how's fatherhood? How are you feeling? Like, and to be honest and quite frank, maybe 1, 2, 3 people have asked me that, and that's not to like put anyone down or say like, oh, they haven't been good friends. It's just it wasn't the type of conversations that we had before. And like if they never knew Henry as a guy who would want to go to a cafe and talk about like how he's feeling, it's like, why would that suddenly all of a sudden, right? So yeah, I think I tell my younger self to normalize that kind of conversation, to seek friends out, just have a meal and just talk about what's going on. You don't need to have a board game in front of you all the time. You don't need to turn on the PS5 all the time.
First of all, considering you only have 1 hour of me time a day, we really appreciate you dedicating that hour to us today. But, you mentioned friendships as a father. Do you have a lot of friends who are dads? It sounds like maybe not.
I have one friend, and I'm not that close. And he has 3 kids, so he doesn't really care about me, probably. So, no, I'm the first one. So it's been a unique position. And there's definitely been scenarios where some group decisions or some like decisions on what to do when we hang out will be a lot different if they're also parents.
Lucky for you, Henry, that we are spending at least a full hour just dedicated to asking you about fatherhood. So soak it up, buddy.
It's your reflection time.
Soak it up.
Yeah. That's why I agreed to, this is my only time to talk about this anyway. No, it's good.
I think it makes sense though, right? As in, I can understand what that situation was before. If most or all your friendships revolve around board games, video games, badminton, why would you expect that to suddenly change? If there wasn't a part of your life that before you had a kid, that was a space for what you call caring conversations, I can kind of understand why that didn't suddenly just magically appear as a new category in your life. If I understand you correctly, you would have wanted to know that is important and to make sure that you are trying to do what you can to create that environment before you have a kid, so that once you have a kid, that environment can continue to be a space for those important conversations that help you get through this very new and challenging stage in life. Is that right?
In a way, it's telling my younger self, this is important for you. I'm telling you what's important for you down the road, and this is who you really are. You really just want these caring conversations. So, I think I know myself a lot more now. And that's probably what what I tell my younger self.
Yeah, I think I can see the challenges there too, especially because you said you're basically one of the only people or in your friend group so far that you're a father and that you have a kid. So everyone's kind of maybe on the same path that they're on still, but you have this like massive change in your life and you're just kind of looking to kind of like grasp at what similarities that you can have or like just conversations about fatherhood, I guess, that you can have with people. But it's not everyone is going to be able to understand if most of your friends are not parents yet, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
You mentioned a few moments ago, Henry, how you have 1 hour of personal time a day. You've had to adapt to shrinking that amount of space that is for you, whereas before your whole life was for you in a way. And I don't know if you have anything to elaborate on there, but one of the things I wanted to get your thoughts on was the topic of time management, right? Because G and I talk about this all the time. As you know, we spend a whole episode talking about our 2.5 hour morning routine, but it's easy to say that and do that, right? When you don't have kids. And so I guess you told us that you've since sacrificed your not sacrificed, you've since decided that video games and I don't know what else you said, badminton maybe are not important. Is there anything you want to add to that in terms of how you've adapted to the challenge of so many conflicting interests and responsibilities and the challenge of managing your time? G and I are so passionate about this lifestyle habits. Is it the case that we're really only going to be passionate and able to execute on these habits until we become parents and then everything is out the window after that? No more morning workouts for you, G, when you're a mom.
Oh my gosh. Well, every hour will be a workout, I suppose.
I would not say so. I think there's stages to raising a child, and definitely the first 4 or 5 years are probably most time intensive. Just because they're not in school, they can't communicate what they want. They can't regulate their emotions. They can't regulate their feeding schedule. Like all your time and energy is spent into figuring out their next meal, if they're going to survive the next day, and so that's probably where the time goes. Eventually, you might kind of notice a trend, like people who have children in their 40s are like the fittest people ever, like because they're making up for lost time. It almost feels like they're going on marathons, right? All the people I see at the gym are like 40-year-old, 45-year-old dads and moms who are like super fit, you know. So I think eventually it does come back for myself, at least. It was more of an identity change. Because what you do kind of defines who you are. You guys wake up 5:30 in the morning. It's like, I'm a disciplined person. I do this like every day. It's like, this is who I am. I'm very disciplined. And suddenly you're not doing that. And then, okay, well, am I a disciplined person? Like I slept in this day. Like, so there's that kind of crisis. Not crisis, but kind of shift in thinking. You just have to be more, I have to be more fluid in who I saw myself as. So before I would say I'm a video gamer, you know, I play Rocket League. I play board games. This is me. But now I'm more like, well, if I didn't have board games, if video games never existed, who is Henry? So that's kind of what I downloaded back to. So that's kind of links back to the previous topic where I talked about caring conversations. Like, who am I really without board games, without video games, without badminton? I'm Henry, and who is Henry? Like, Henry is this, Henry is that. So how many of my friends know this Henry instead of the board game Henry?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, that identity shift, because I always imagine too, like right now, I would say I'm like a scheduled person, a routine person, but I would imagine like being a parent, you're like agile, you're adaptive. You have to be like on at all times. You got to pivot every time, I don't know, your kid throws up on your shirt or pees their pants.
Yeah, precisely. Like we used to try to keep the house very clean. It was very orderly. With a kid, there's really no way you can control that. Oh, plus we have dogs, so now that's out the window. But yeah, it's you don't make the choices anymore. They decide what they want, and you just kind of like navigate them towards where you want them to go. And sometimes it doesn't happen. Like now we're okay. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen.
Especially when I know your kid, Lucas, Henry, one of his, I don't know if he still does this because this was maybe a year ago, but one of his favorite pastimes is to throw kitchenware all over the floor. Does he still do that?
Still does that. Yeah.
Like he'll open up the kitchen drawers, right? And just like grab things one by one and throw them across the living room. And that's like what makes him happy, right?
Yeah. Now he knows to ask for the kitchen tools. He's not just like trying to reach for it anymore. So like he tricks you to carrying him, and he points at something on the table. Like, what are you pointing at? And I open a drawer. I was like, oh shit, I should not have opened a drawer. Now he sees like all these utensils.
I feel like Lucas is onto something because I think that would be a pretty satisfying thing to do, like to rip open all your cupboards and throw out all your utensils. Maybe adults just don't know how to have fun or know it's good.
I would really enjoy doing that actually if I didn't have to.
Yeah.
It'd be quite fun.
If you had someone to clean it up for you, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Just don't do it at my place, David.
Okay.
You can do it at yours.
Okay, so Henry, you talked about earlier, like partner was pregnant. You kind of had a shift in like responsibility mentality. You're like, oh, I actually need to maybe take on a few more things because my wife is pregnant. She's carrying a baby. Now that you have your kid and he's 2 years old, how do you guys almost 2? How do you guys share responsibilities? And has that changed over time?
Yeah, it has changed. I think before we had Lucas, maybe we did cooking like 70-30%. So she would cook 30% of the time, I would cook 70% of the time. Now it seems like 99.9% of the time it's me. So that's just it. But beyond that, like I have to do a shout out here, otherwise she's gonna be really upset. I don't make a shout out. Because she works part-time, Sid works part-time. So she's been responsible for a lot of childcare. So to the point where I could stay at home, just focus on my work on the times that she takes Lucas. So I think she's definitely taking more on top of what she's already done. And the only thing I could do is continue doing what I did, maybe take a bit more. Like I'm okay with grimy floors, and she isn't really. So I'll do a bit more vacuuming. I'll cook a lot more. I try to help where I can.
So do you have any tips like for new parents on like sharing responsibilities or what you guys have done that seems to work well?
Probably listening to each other. I think we've always had in some ways, a pretty balanced responsibility. Like I know like some guys don't cook, right? Or some guys don't take out garbage, or some guys don't like cleaning at all, or some guys don't do the laundry. I'm generalizing. I'm sure the modern man is not like that anymore. But talking to my parents' generation, they're like, because we have bought a play kitchen for Lucas because he loves watching me cook, so he tries to cook as well. So I bought a play kitchen for him, and then one of our parents was like, "Oh, isn't that for a girl? Like, shouldn't girls do that?" So in that sense, our roles have been kind of balanced, but she's taking on more. In terms of what advice I give to new parents or parents to be, probably just listening to your partner. Start noticing all those little things that gets done around the house. If you notice that every single time you use toilet paper and it's starting to run out, and next time you go to the toilet, it's like, oh, fresh roll of toilet paper. I wonder who did that. Start maybe take a note. Like, okay, next time I'll put like 2 extra rolls in the storage room, or the counter's really clean today. Like I didn't have to go through this sticky mess. It's like, then you think, oh yeah, so and so cleaned it. Maybe I should clean it next time. I'm still a work in progress. I say this now, and Sid will be like, "What do you mean? Like you haven't done jack?" And anyway, it's a work in progress, but just taking more notes as to like all those invisible labors that each person does.
That sounds like some good advice for relationships in general. Not even if you have a kid. Any relationship, I think, could benefit from listening to each other.
That's good, but it also sounds very reactive in that you are sort of learning and picking up cues as you go. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just curious, especially thinking for myself, if I were to have kids, I think that I would be quite preoccupied with thinking about sort of the battle plan, if you will. Who's going to do what? Let's just say, for example, changing diapers, right? Was that ever a conversation you had before the kid came as okay, who's going to do more of it, or who's going to be the default? Or let's say the baby wakes up in the middle of the night and they're crying. Okay, who goes to comfort the kid? Did you ever talk to Sydney about how to divide up these things before it happens, or do you just wing it as you go? And if you wing it as you go, was there ever a time when either person potentially became a bit resentful if they felt that it was not equitably shared, the burdens?
Yeah, for sure. That's a good question. For diaper, just kind of addressing the examples that you raised. Diapers, no. It was always clear, at least in my head, that we were going to share. Whoever is nearest, whoever can, whoever has clean hands would do the diaper changing. For the nighttime feeds, that's a very difficult topic, and I think new parents or parents to be will have to talk about this one, is who does the night stuff. Because if you don't bottle train your baby, the mom has to be awake for every feed. And at the same time, like the dad could be awake as well, but like, what's the point? Like, you're just staring, right? So I think the first 3 weeks I tried to wake up, but like, we were just like, you know what, just go to sleep. Like, what's the point? You're just staring and just like falling asleep, watching me feed the baby. Right?
Misery loves company.
Yeah, so that, I mean, you could do that, but I did not do that. And there was definitely some level of resentment there, because every single time she's done a feed, the thing she sees is me snoring happily in the bed.
Yeah.
So that's probably not a good look there. But yeah, I think just having that expectation, saying, you know what, when I do nighttime feeds, like, you don't need to wake up, but what I like to see in return is maybe things are set up right away for me. I think those are conversations that you probably should have. We didn't have, but if we were to have the next one, that's probably something that I would have to think about and talk about.
What's baby carrying or parental chore do you both hate the most? And it's like hot potato in terms of who has to do it. I'm just curious, in a joking way, like, what's the thing that you both really don't look forward to doing, but you just got to do it? And sometimes you might take turns because no one likes doing it, but it's just got to be done. Is there something like that?
Early on, it was this explosive poop where like his poop would just explode in the diaper, and we don't know why. So like his whole shirt was wet. Because if you're cleaning it, there's a chance that you might become casualty yourself. So yeah, that was definitely a hot potato moment. Nowadays, it's actually cleaning him after dinner, because his hands are so oily and grimy. He tries to touch you when you're picking him up, but you're like wearing a white shirt. Now that's probably the more hot potato moment. I'm sure it changes as he grows. Could be talking about the birds and the bees, like who's going to talk to them about that? Like, is it the guy? Is it the mom? Who's going to talk about like his girlfriend experience? Like, okay, you guys aren't getting married. You're just girlfriend, boyfriends for like maybe 2 months, you know?
Yeah, so your child is a toddler right now, but eventually they're going to grow up. Do you think you're going to be like a more strict or a more chill parent? And are you doing that already? Like, are you someone who likes to, you can learn as you go, like you'll experience all the bad things and I'm not going to stop you? Or are you more protective and like trying to protect your child from, I don't know, not touching the socket, but something along those lines? Like, I would hope that you stop your child before they touch the socket, but things like that.
Yeah, I thought about whether I'd be a chill or strict parent. I'm definitely more of the type, you know what, if he scrapes himself, that's good, because then he knows not to walk or run that way anymore. Mm-hmm. Then I'll never have to watch over him, right? So if he falls and like scrapes his elbow, then yeah, that is not a good place to run. So I don't need to tell him that. He just learns by himself. So Lucas has a lot of scars on his knees as a result, which is good because now like I'm less worried about him walking. In terms of whether I'm strict or chill in that aspect, I think it's all relative. I think my mom thinks I'm borderline neglectful. And like, I know some parents that we know that think that we're a bit too strict. So it's all relative. Yeah.
You're a bit too strict also.
More on his food. They call me a health nut. So I got to make sure like Lucas isn't taking too much sugar, Every single time we get something for him, I look at the nutrient label, and if it has more than like 6% sugar, it's like, oh no, it's not good for him. But some parents are like, oh yeah, it's fine. Once in a while, ice cream is good. I'm more of the parents like, I wouldn't eat that myself, so I don't want my child to eat it. And that's kind of one idiosyncrasy of me. Maybe like, I'm not saying that's the right way. I'm not saying that's the wrong way. That's just something I like to do.
And in what way are you, in your mom's eye, neglectful?
Well, letting him fall, or like, she's I don't know the right way to say this, but she's very stereotypical Asian mom, where like almost coddling kind of way. Oh yeah. Oh, the sun's out. Oh, better put on sunscreen. Oh, better put on a hat. I'm more of the, if I go with sunburn, that's good. That means I have enough vitamin D in my body to last me for a week. So yeah,
I don't know if that's what it means, but okay.
Yeah, I guess it's really different. I always thought of like myself, I'd be learn as you go, like go for all the scrapes and bruises or whatever. But then I'm not actually sure. When the time comes, maybe I'd just be like, okay, you're not allowed to fall. You're not allowed to get bruises or anything like that.
I think that's a good point, Chi, because it's easy for us, for example, you and I, to sit here and talk to each other about, say, our parenting philosophies or how we plan to raise our kid. Let's say we're like, oh yeah, we agree with Henry. We're going to let our kid scrape his knee. But when you actually have your kid in front of you, right? This living human being that you love more than anything you possibly could imagine. It's a whole different story, I think. And I think I can have a lot of sympathy for moms that are overprotective or coddling. It's not hard to understand where they're coming from. I think my sister Brenda mentioned this on her episode too, which is that it's very hard for parents to be able to sit there and watch their kids cry, for example, or watch their kids suffer in any way. But I do agree with Henry and with my sister is in that it is often helpful. I think so myself. Like I think my mom coddled me too much and I wish she didn't. So I think those knee scrapes are good, Henry. Good on ya for letting him fall. Just give him the Batman quote, why do we fall?
Or give him some sugar after. He'll be okay. No sugar either.
Yeah, it is a bit painful to see him like cry his heart out. But sometimes like if you pick him up, he learns that whenever he cries, he gets picked up. Also not good because he'll cry all the time just to get picked up. Fine balance.
It's a very fine balance. So you mentioned about the explosive poop earlier, and that's not a fun thing for you and Sydney to have to decide who to handle that and stuff. On that note, I've kind of heard from studies or just anecdotally that the initial years of being a new parent can be really tough on a relationship, right? Before you have potentially more time for yourselves, you have date nights. It's hard enough to have a long-term relationship without a kid when you have all the time in the world to dedicate to each other. Then when suddenly you have so much less time, so you're saying you have no time for yourself anymore. Well, I can only imagine that also extends to having much less time between you and Sydney as, romantic life partners unto yourself. So I'm curious how you and Sydney have sort of managed or nurtured your relationship during these challenging months. Do you still find time for date nights? Have you learned anything about what is important?
Yeah, this is still a work in progress. Like the first year was really rough. I think we both lost our identity. She lost her entire identity. She used to have lots of time for herself. She would take time to go hiking or go cycling, or I myself would do the same. There was definitely an imbalance where I was trying to adhere to my previous lifestyle of training for badminton, training for basketball, because that's who I am, playing video games, playing board games. That's what I knew. That's who I was. Meanwhile, the baby's not attached to me. I don't have to feed the baby unless I'm bottle feeding. And Lucas was a special case where he wouldn't take the bottle. So the only person he would want to feed from is Sydney. So then she's looking at me, playing badminton, still getting like my workout in, and it's like, what the hell? Like nothing has changed for this guy. Like, meanwhile, I'm here at home and feeding the baby and, taking care of all these other things that needs to be done around the house, and this guy's still doing whatever he wants. So there was definitely multiple moments where we had to sit down and say, hey, things are different now. Like this can't go on because you're not just Henry the badminton player. You're not Henry the board game player. You're Henry the dad. I think she herself had to adopt the new meaning of she's now Sydney the mom. So the first year was really rough, not going to lie. There are definitely moments where the only positive interactions I had were like with my dog and my baby. So that was rough. I think for her it was kind of same. But now, 2 years forward, we've learned to communicate these needs. We're more aware of, okay, well, I'm going 2 hours out this week for badminton. I know every single time I go out with my friends or I go out without Sydney or Lucas, I'm taking time away from her. And then she also is now realizing every single time she does that, she's also taking time away from me. Whereas before kids, you're not taking time away from each other. You have these times that you're just kind of filling it in a jigsaw puzzle. But now it's not a jigsaw puzzle anymore. You're taking time away from each other. So you have to be very conscious. Like every single time you do something for yourself, you're actually taking time away from the partner. And so your time becomes much more intentional. I think that's where people who aren't parents don't understand this when a parent friend reaches out to them saying, hey, let's do this. And they're like, oh, well, I'm not free. I can't do it. Sorry. But if I have parent friends, they understand, yeah, dude, yeah, let's go hang out. Like, because you're intentionally asking me to hang out. So this must mean a lot for you because you're taking time away from your child and your mom and your partner to do this. That's kind of where I am now. Mentally is like, I wish my friends knew this. Yeah,
I mean, I think that's helpful for people who are listening who may have friends that have kids. This is sort of what a parent has to go through. And then even for parents, you know, you kind of have to communicate that to your friends, I guess. Like, this is what's going on. This is how I'm feeling. And this is my schedule. And I only have these certain times to be able to hang out, so that there's that understanding between the two groups, I guess. It's tough. It's challenging.
Yeah, I really appreciate a lot of the points you said there, Henry. I don't think I really thought about it in that way, even though, you know, I'm aware of that, obviously, right? If you're coming out while you're a parent, that's not easy. But yeah, the bottom line being, let's say I show up for badminton. It's not the same thing as you showing up for badminton, right? You being free is not the same thing as me being free as a single person. In a nutshell, what we're saying here is that as a parent, your time is more of a scarce commodity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not everyone appreciates that as a scarce commodity. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
I'm surprised to hear that you had a phase when you, as a new dad, were more or less trying your best to continue with your, you know, badminton, board games, workouts, whatever. I didn't know that. I would have assumed that all of that halted right away. I guess that identity shift was not automatic.
No, I definitely thought I had toned it down already. I thought like once a week badminton, maybe every 2 days a gym. I think now I have a more regular schedule, but definitely in the first year it was almost impossible to do that with just the unpredictability and just the amount of support that my partner needed, that Sid needed from me. Not only like there's beyond the physical support, like cooking her meals and doing the chores, is also like me being there. Because if I'm working out or if I'm playing badminton, the only thing she knows is that when I'm smashing birdie like 200 miles per hour, I'm not thinking about her. So that's probably what she wants. Like, you know, I'm thinking of you. Like, I'm here, you know.
G, do you have any thoughts on this from a female perspective? Do you think Henry's sort of on the right track in the sense that if you imagine your future husband, is that meaningful? Like, let's say they can't breastfeed, obviously, but that they're not out playing badminton and not thinking of you during that time. Is that something that you think would be quite important and meaningful for you?
That's a good question. I've actually never really thought about that before, because I always imagined that there would be like a million things to do. Like, there's never a time when you just like are done all your chores and the baby is like super happy where you can just go and have your alone time. Like, there's always going to be chores to do, things to clean up, babies to feed, babies to change, whatever. So I never thought that there would be like a shortage of chores where one parent could maybe go out and have a lot of time. I think it would be more like equally split, at least for the chores, equally split if there is downtime. So I always imagine that things should or would be like a very equal split. If there's things that a mom just has to do, I don't know. I don't really think that that would be super important to me, that they're kind of like thinking about me. As long as they're contributing to the chores still, I think having that downtime actually might be even more helpful, because then they can have some time to themselves where they can maybe come back more recharged and like able to help out in other ways.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everyone's different, right? I'm not looking for a right line. So I was just, curious how you might imagine yourself in that situation. I think one of the things that I want to draw out here is a consistent theme I'm hearing from Henry, and something that I've also heard from other friends, other moms actually, which is that, you mentioned earlier, Henry, let's say the baby wakes up, right? And you are breastfeeding. The man can't help in any way. Like, that's just the reality of it. I didn't really appreciate this until about a year ago when one of my colleagues who came back from mat leave told me about this. This sort of new appreciation, which is that it's not equal, because there are certain things that a mother is at the very least better positioned, if not exclusively able to do. And I'm always someone who believes very, very strongly in equality. I'm sure there's many different ways to parse that out, which is basically at the very basic interpretation is I don't want, for example, the wife or the partner to do all the chores just because I'm a man. That makes no sense to me. And if I'm cooking the entire week, hopefully the other partner can pick it up and maybe cook more the next week. So it's always equal. In my mind is how the world should work. But that's assuming that both parties can contribute equally. But in parenthood, I think maybe there's other things, but certainly even in the first year, right? Just feeding alone, that's maybe one thing, but it's a huge thing. That one thing alone is not equal. Fatherhood, if as a topic, one of my takeaways is that a big part of fatherhood is recognizing and understanding that your wife has greater burdens intrinsically than you do, and B, what does that mean for me as the partner and as a dad?
Yeah, no, you put it very nicely. I think it's never going to be equal. Like I could sit here and say, yeah, it's pretty equal, but it's not equal for sure. Even starting from conception, like the baby is not within me. I don't have to take vitamins. I don't go to doctors. I can go to doctor checks, but I'm not being prodded by the doctor. I don't feel the baby's heartbeat the whole time. I don't randomly have to get up and pee in the middle of the night. Even starting from that point, and then even after baby's born, like I'm not going part-time to take care of baby. If we need childcare, it's a mother usually. It's very rare that the father goes part-time and the mother goes full-time going back to work. The father just stays home. Just that aspect alone is not equal. So yeah, there's definitely recognition and more appreciation of like, what else is not equal in my life? What else is not equal? It starts with parenthood, seeing that's not equal, at least for me, and then seeing other parts of my life that aren't equal. Earlier I mentioned about trip planning. Like, what about trip planning is not equal? Oh yeah, she's taking more of this on. Like, I never noticed that she took this on, so I'm going to try to take this on a bit more. So fatherhood definitely helped notice all these invisible labor that my partner does, and in general, I think men, I hope, would notice this.
Yeah, I think it's easier to recognize what equal kind of means when you don't have a kid, because it's like, okay, I cook and you clean, like that's relatively equal, I guess. But once you have a kid, because like you said, David, the guy doesn't understand, I guess, all of the biological implications that a woman has when it comes to childbearing and feeding and all of that. They might not, like recognize what equal means. Like equal is no longer like I cook, you clean. It's like there's other stuff beyond because you can't breastfeed a child, for example. But it's hard to recognize if you don't know or have heard of it, which is why this podcast is great.
So speaking of a podcast, so some of our listeners I know are will be dads in the near future. So you shared a bunch of things about things that you've learned after becoming a dad, and that's all good. But I'm just wondering if you have anything to add in terms of what you would consider to be the most surprising thing about fatherhood or being a parent. What's the most surprising thing in a good way? Because we talked a lot about challenges, but I want to hear a little bit about what is the most unexpected joy that has come into your life now that you're a dad.
It's kind of corny to say, but sometimes like your laughter and your happiness actually comes from like really deep within, deeper than you'll ever have with friends. Like with friends, you might have a good time, you get really happy and you feel good. But the way I feel good when you see your child randomly do peekaboo at you, is very different. It's almost very visceral, and the only person you can really share that with is your partner and with your child. And like I can tell this story, and the two of you, as much as you want to try to understand it, you won't feel it until you're a parent, or you see the first time your child laughs because you tickled them, or first time they cry because they couldn't stack a block on another, and you're just wondering why they're crying. You'll never have that experience with anything else. Like, I have a friend who compares it with a dog. It is not a dog. You cannot compare it with a dog.
It sounds like with parenthood, what it gives you most unexpectedly is emotions on a level you've never experienced before. And for that reason, that's what makes it unexpected. That's what makes it a surprise, because you never felt like, I've heard this sentiment from a lot of parents, especially moms. They're like, I never knew I could love something this much until I saw my child. I hear that all the time, and I think it's beautiful. It's most parents feel that way. But yeah, I know I don't know what that feels like. I know I don't know what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it definitely gives a different dimension to my life where everything just kind of melts away, all the complications, and everyone experiences it very differently. For myself, I experience it positively, and I'm very happy for that. But yeah, it's also like children are kind of amazing because it kind of makes you think more about yourself and your childhood. For me, at least, in those quiet times where I'm just spending time with a child and Lucas is just playing with his digger or whatever, it makes me think of my childhood. I don't think in our busy lives we get a lot of chance to just sit down and think about our childhood and how we became a person. Definitely having a child made me think about that. And that's such a rare opportunity to reflect on your childhood, yourself as a human being. Is special.
It's one of those you had to be there kind of things.
Oh.
Yes.
As Michael Scott says, inside joke. I would love to be part of one someday. To sort of wrap up, Henry, you mentioned at the very beginning how you would love to have more conversations and space in your life for some of these caring conversations, for someone to ask you more, how is fatherhood? How's life now? And hopefully G and I have asked you many questions that sort of touch us upon some of those unexpressed feelings or opinions that you've had, sitting with you and with no one to share it with except potentially your partner. So before we wrap up, I just want to give you the floor in the sense that what else do you want to share about your life these days as a dad, as a parent, that maybe we didn't ask you?
Take what I say with a huge grain of salt. Not everyone experiences parenting the way I did. Not everyone has the same circle of friends or made friends the same way I did. So I'll say, Henry said this, must be this way, and then go dive right into parenthood.
What is something you feel that is not as publicly acknowledged, but you just wish more people knew about or talked about?
I think it's the whole can of worms, but toxic masculinity and what that means. It's definitely worthwhile to take a deep dive into our lives as men to see where toxic masculinity has informed your opinions on how fatherhood should look like and what motherhood should look like. Take an example in my life. Someone was going to be a father and they expressed that they still want to continue training for badminton. And their justification was, so-and-so does this. Like, he plays badminton every week. And in my head, that seems weird. Then who's taking care of the kid? This guy has 2 kids. Like, I think that's where I kind of reflected on how toxic masculinity, being averse to opening about your feelings and being the alpha, all those things seem so... I was never really... I don't think I was ever that kind of guy, but I definitely bought into some of it. That did not help the relationship at all. That did not help me becoming a father. So I think it's worthwhile, regardless whether you're going to become a new parent or not, for any man to dive into themselves and kind of look into what toxic masculinity is. You might not think you're embodying some of those traits, but you probably are. Some mentality.
Everyone's Googling toxic masculinity right now.
Do you encounter that, G, in your guy friends or dates that you go on? Do you think that that's something that you, as a female, gets impatient with or frustrated with in men?
Not really with my circle of friends. As Uday mentioned, we talk about feelings. We talk about a lot of, deeper topics.
Yeah, I think that's something that I did appreciate a lot about Uday's sort of life story and perspective is like, wow, this dude is in tune with himself. Mm-hmm. And yeah. It's pretty rare. It's pretty rare. Well, the other thing that's pretty rare is your free time, Henry. So thanks so much for coming on today. We took more than an hour of your time, so I will have to do something to thank Cindy next time I see her for letting you.
Yeah, that means we're taking her time.
Yeah, no, 100%. So
wait, not so fast. After the recording, Henry sent us a voice note with some additional messages that he wanted to include. Here they are.
First part is for friends of parents / my friends, and just to recognize that this is a transformative phase, not only for your parent friend, but for your relationship as well. And I recognize that a lot of times it might seem like you, the friend, will have to step up in your friendship to reach out a lot more, or you feel like your parent friend isn't making an extra effort. More often than not, that's probably is a case. They don't have the time, energy to do it, and you feel like you might want to give up. And I kind of understand that. No one wants to be holding one end of a friendship all the time. Before we do that, though, I do want to say sometimes it is difficult for parents. They could be going through a dark time, and it's just nice to kind of reach out and say, hey, I'm thinking of you. I know you don't have time. When's a good time for you? When do you want to grab lunch? Let's see what works for you. Because I do remember in my experience, there are times where I was free and I kind of wanted someone to go out for a run or to eat lunch or to have dinner. And most of the time, I just ended up spending the day by myself because one, they weren't free or they didn't seem interested in what I wanted to do. So it could be a very lonely feeling. So if you have a parent friend, just reach out, say hi. Second part I want to kind of talk to our new parents or parents to be, and just to address that, there's going to be a lot of changes in your brain chemistry, in your relationships. In terms of your relationships, it could be better. Your relationship with your parents could be deeper or they could be worse. Same with friendship. They could be better or worse. I would say be prepared for both outcomes. For me, I definitely had both outcomes. In terms of what happens to your brain, and you could probably do a lot more research by yourself, you might notice you're feeling a lot more. As a guy, that might feel entirely foreign. That's because you're actively engaging that part of your brain that analyzes and expresses emotion. And as you exercise that part a lot more, you'll in your daily life, you'll start to see and experience things that you never really haven't before. You might start noticing things. And that's something you shouldn't be scared of. That's something you should celebrate. You're exercising more emotional intelligence. You're living a fuller life, so to say. So celebrate that. Be happy that you're feeling more emotions. And last, kind of third part, I want to address to Sydney, because I know she's listening to this podcast, is I just want to make it clear to the whole world that I couldn't have asked for a better partner in life and a better parent for Lucas. I never had the doubt that you'd make an excellent mother. And more importantly, I always believe that you were the one for me. You've been the most amazing friend and lover, and you complete me as a person. This sounds scripted, and it is because I wrote it down. But I do believe we are funnier, kinder, and better as a pair, and I couldn't ask for more. Closing notes, I do want to take this chance to thank you, G and David, for providing this opportunity and space for me to kind of share my fatherhood experience. I might have said some things I want to backtrack or not say in the future, but I feel it's important to say what I want to say in its rawest form as well. You two have something amazing here with the podcast. I wish the best to you, and I'll be your number one fan as long as the podcast is on.
Is there somewhere people who might want to connect with you, Henry, go to online if they're interested? Do you want to plug any socials? Or I think you're a pretty private person, but in case there is, do you want to share anything?
Yeah, actually, the BC blood donations are also always looking for people to donate blood. And I used to do that regularly, but I can't anymore. So if you have time and you're listening to this podcast, go to bcblood.ca and donate blood.
So not Henry's Instagram, but a link to blood donation. Got it.
Yes.
I love that. Well, yeah, thanks so much, Henry, for coming on again. And if you ever need a babysitter, I'm usually up at 4:30 every morning. So
be careful what you wish for.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. And Henry, I'll see you on the badminton court sometime.
Yeah, see you soon.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, G. Thanks, David. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I really hope you all enjoyed today's conversation. If you did, we'd appreciate if you could take a moment to share our podcast with your friends. Follow us on whichever podcast platform you're using. Give us a rating on Spotify or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We would also love to learn about you, our amazing audience, and shine a light on your unique journeys. Do you have a story about what helps you thrive in your 30s or challenges you've overcome? Let us know at that30showpod@gmail.com or DM our Instagram, that30showpod. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope you have a wonderful week ahead.